around and make money for the school. Well, when they first started singing, they were singing the songs everybody else was singing. Nobody was interested. And then the person who directed them, who was trained in classical European music, took the music that he knew and put it on top of the music that they knew, the Negro spirituals, and that's how we get what we call the arranged spiritual. I'm going to play it and you tell me if you kind of know the sound already. It's a sound that schools like Hampton and Howard and Fisk continue to sing to this day. So let's just listen to a little bit of that. And the reason I want to bring this up to you is this. The Ku Klux Klan tried to stop them. They suffered from tuberculosis. Some of them died as they traveled around the world, but they sounded so beautiful that the Queen of England, who was Queen Victoria at the time, decided she would have her portrait artist paint a picture of them. And if you go to Fisk University today, ask them to take you to truly
I'm a rolling through an unfriendly world. I'm a rolling.
It's a very pretty sound, yeah? Nod your head like you think it is anyway, all right? Yeah, that's what I need you to know. This is what's important. They were poor kids. Their school was crumbling. They were stopped at every turn, and yet Fisk University stands today because by the time people really heard what the Negro spiritual sounded like, everybody else wanted to hear it around the world. And they went from just barely being able to eat a couple of times a week to having to have 3 booking managers. Even Beyonce doesn't have 3 booking managers, okay? That's how big they were at that time. Why do I tell you about it? Because if they could do it at a time where the Klan would actually try to stop them, where people really didn't even believe black people were human, then what could you and I do? It's a time to think about writing ourselves into history. Every time we stand up every day, every time you show up and do the right thing, you're writing your own page in history. And that's why I want you to think about these people who are here. If you look on your sheet, you'll see that we get to what we call transitional gospel music when we get to the 1890s to the early 1920s. His name is Charles Albert Tindley, and he would write songs as he prepared his sermons for Sunday morning. So in a way, he's kind of like the grandfather of gospel, because it's not till we get to Thomas Dorsey in 1929 that we get to the person that we really call the father of gospel music. Anybody know the song called Precious Lord, Take My Hand? Mm-hmm. A couple of you? Okay. That's a very famous gospel song. He wrote this song. Let me just back up just a short minute. He was a blues piano player. Anybody in here have a mama or grandmama who listens to the blues? Okay, for you of you, all right, so you know what it sounds like. Well, he was a blues piano player during the week, but then on Sunday, he was the Baptist preacher's son. Okay? And a lot of people didn't think he should combine those things, but he did. In fact, he called his music gospel blues. That's what he called it. A lot of churches didn't want to hear it. You can go to almost any black church today and hear gospel music, but at that time, people did not want to, a lot of people didn't want to hear it because it sounded like the blues. But he persisted and he persisted. And eventually, by the late 1930s to early 40s, people liked his music so much, they called the music Dorsey's. Okay, they didn't call them gospel, they called them Dorsey's because they were so identified with him. Why do I tell you about him? Because we call him the father of gospel music because even though there were people who put him out of the church, people who would embarrass him and invite him to church and then not let him play his music, he decided this was music that would make everybody around the world want to know more about this God that he celebrated in the music. And today, there's virtually no place in the world you can go where people don't know about gospel music. They sing it in Switzerland, they sing it in England, they sing it I went to Japan, they had gospel choirs in Japan singing it just the way we do. So that's why it's important. It's important because once again, he's somebody who faced opposition, but decided he was going to do what he felt in his heart God wanted him to do. And that's what gospel music is about. How many of you know the name Mahalia Jackson? What do you know about Mahalia Jackson? Anything? She can sing. Okay, yeah, she can really sing. All right. She was actually gospel's first superstar. And when I say superstar, this is back in the time when we didn't have anything like Entertainment Tonight to follow people around. But what they did have were newsreels. They had cameras. And if you went to the movies, and you know how you see trailers for the new movies coming up, well, instead they would have these newsreels, and people would actually sit there, and they'd be excited because they would see that Mahalia Jackson had gone to England, or she had performed in different places around the country. And they were excited because they wanted to know what she was doing, because that was their favorite singer. She died in the early, she died more than 30 years ago, and there are people who to this day still call her their favorite gospel singer. Let me just show you a picture of her. Okay. You may have watched a movie with your mom or your grandmom called Imitation of Life. And at the end of the movie, you know, the girl who's been passing for white, and she's told her mother, I don't want to see you again. And at the end of the funeral, Mama, Mama, I'm so sorry. Okay. Well, during the funeral, it's Mahalia Jackson who sings. And usually, no matter what age the person is, people just cry and cry when because her voice is so powerful. Let me tell you a secret. The director of that movie tried to make her look ugly. For some reason, he wanted to make her look ugly. But guess what? People didn't care how she looked because her voice was so powerful. She recorded the first gold record we ever had in gospel. Tell me her name again.
Mahalia Jackson.
That's good. All right. Hold on a second. I'm going to play you a little bit of her first hit record. It's called I Will Move On Up a Little Higher. Nope, this is 10. It went to the wrong one. Let's try it one more time. There we go. Now, mind you, this sounds old-timey to you, but when this music came out, this was virtually scandalous because of the boogie-woogie beat in the bottom of it. Sort of like putting hip-hop to anything today. It was just something that church people thought, wow, is that really church music? But listen to how powerful her voice is. She comes out of New Orleans, she moves to Chicago, she and Professor Dorsey start working together. And together they create this phenomenon by going around and singing this music in churches. Eventually she becomes known as the world's greatest gospel singer. And I want you to know about her because she wasn't rich when she was born, but by the time she died, people on every continent knew who she was. Mahalia Jackson. She's a part of gospel history, and she's a reminder that we can write ourselves into history too. We have a gift, and we focus and give that gift everything we have. Just a couple